Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast. We're talking about the Cubs and baseball, even though baseball can't legally talk about baseball right now. Nobody exists. No player's face exists anywhere. The sport doesn't exist. And yet here we are doing this for free. My name's Kevin McCaffrey. I'm here with Adam Mamawala. What's up, Adam?
How's it going? It's kind of weird going from like so much activity to now it's literally illegal for there to be any activity.
Yeah, it is literally illegal, which is weird because I saw Justin Verlander's contract was like in limbo and it just got officially made official with the Astros 2 days ago.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, what up with that? As Keenan Thompson once famously asked, what up with that? I don't know the rules on any of this stuff, but yeah, it is weird that it was such a like cool sprint of off-season activity there till the owners chose to do a lockout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been going on with you? What's new in Kevin McCaffrey's life?
I nothing too much. I had a busy online week. I had a video blow up pretty big that I was a stand-up video where there was a lady, a crazy lady in Fredericksburg, Virginia, who I dealt with, and that video got like millions and millions of views. The Daily Star in London wrote about it, and that led to, it was on the front page of Reddit, and then it led to death threats that I got from I had to go to the cops about. So soon I'll make a TikTok about what you do when you're threatened with death credibly online. So that'll be a fun little sequel I'll be able to put together.
And I don't feel like either of us are the sort of people who would casually describe someone as being crazy, but this is like legitimate crazy town, someone who needs some help. Because like, for anybody who has not watched the video, obviously go to Kevin's Twitter and Instagram, but like, I don't know that you could have handled it with more aplomb.
Thank you. That is,
to use a fun word.
Yeah, and I think it's rare when you get in the comments. Adam and I are stand-up comics. If this is your first time listening to this, who talk about baseball, follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter, Instagram, all the things. But yeah, a surprising number of people in the comments being like, "You were so nice to her," because it was basically a drunk interrupting heckler lady. She ended up throwing handfuls of cash at me and other things, but
and then forgot her mom.
Forgot her mom. Had to come back in for it. I've had to block her on so many different mediums that she keeps coming after me on. So that's been kind of wild. And yeah, you and I are both comedians who I think if you're talking about who you would expect to get death threats, I think we'd both be relatively low on the list. And I just honestly am like, if you're threatening me with death, you need to see more comedy. Like you should see more. You're going to threaten everybody with death.
Yeah, because like I guess there's no excuse ever for a death threat under any circumstances, but like I guess I could understand if you lashed out at her, insulted her mom or whatever, why someone would be driven to have these violent thoughts. But you didn't do anything. You just told her that her behavior was unacceptable, offered to pay for their tickets, which was thrown back at you. I don't, like, I quite literally don't know how else a person handles that situation.
I don't either, but hey, more TikTok followers. So who's the big winner? Kevin, dead in a week.
Forgetting the mom is really funny. I mean, it's the equivalent of like, you get in an argument with your girlfriend and you slam the door and then realize like, oh, I got to come back for my keys. Like imagine that, but with your mom.
With your old mom. Right. It's very much that energy, like storming out and like, well, this is a shit. This is a bummer.
I'll tell you what, let's transition into better moms, namely your mom, who listens to this show and also came to one of my shows at Zanies when I recorded my album and gave me a cake, dude. She brought me a cake.
I'm curious about this because I've not asked her specifically, but Adam recorded his album at Zanies and some of our listeners appeared there. They came through, right?
Yes, big thanks to the pastry man, aka Tyler De Patisse,
OG day one,
Sarah Sanchez, who came to the show that our buddy Ken Schultz did a guest spot on. So she got to see two away games ish people.
Just an
And
incredible amount of
very nice.
Cubs indie baseball media here. Bleed Cubby Blues, Sarah, us, Ken Schultz from Outsports. Yeah, what an industry night. But I did my mom did she send a cake to the green room, or did she just physically hand you a cake after or before the show?
I'll tell you exactly what happened, and I think she'll appreciate this story. I know you're listening. Hello, Ev. So it was before my first show of the weekend, and one of the people working at Zanies came up to me with this like very large bag and was like kind of awkward about it and handed it to me. And I was like, what is this? And she was like, some older lady wants to give this to you. I don't know what this is. And I was like, I'm not expecting anything. Can you describe her? And she was like, she seems nice and she has a festive sweater. I was like, I think I know who this might be.
Yes.
And it was in this very large kind of cardboard bag with tissue paper and all the works. And lo and behold, it was a cake. It was the nicest gift I've ever received that I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I know, a cake for one when you're there for 2 nights. It's like, I really
I brought it into the green room. I offered it to the other comedians. But nonetheless, a very lovely gesture from a lovely lady who we've had on this podcast before in a Mother's Day
episode.
But,
the shows were fun. How did Chicago represent?
Chicago represented quite well. The shows were great. The show that your mom attended was actually like the least attended one, and even then it was like 80 people, and then every other show was over 100. The capacity of Zanies is like maybe, I don't know, 140, something like that.
It's a real tight 140 though. Like 100 is pretty filled in there.
Yeah. So the other 3 shows were almost at capacity. The last one was like literally every seat filled to the point where I couldn't even hang out in the back of the room.
Right.
Before the show, but yeah, it was great. It was fun. I feel good. I don't have the official album yet, but I feel good about what I got, with the exception of some drunk girls who, during the best show of the entire weekend, when I've listened back to it, most of what I hear is just these girls going, yes, yes.
Oh,
so
shut the fuck
may
up.
have possibly ruined the best show that I had.
That
we'll see.
Oh, that makes me mad. That
it made me mad too.
I gotta introduce them to a lady in Virginia I know, and just have them take care of each other. Jesus Christ, that sucks. Well, I'm glad, but you got 4 good shows, and we thank all of you for showing up. And yeah, if you've listened to the show for long enough, you know Adam and I are stand-up comics who really dig baseball and hence do this podcast. But usually we talk more about baseball. But as you guys know, there's less baseball than usual going on right now.
There is.
So, do you have any baseball / Cubs topics you'd like to kick off with? And I have a few bullet points too.
Well, I mean, there's not really much to discuss pertaining to the Cubs right now. By the way, is there still going to be a Cubs convention in the middle of a lockout?
No,
right?
they canceled it anyway. They canceled it theoretically due to pandemic last year, which I mean that's fair.
Right.
I think more I think that's the given reason for this year as well. Which is like fair, totally. It's just a little like you still have games, and you still like go to games. And there are away games branded that are indoors technically too that people go to. So yeah, it's whatever. They're not doing the Cubs convention this year. I'll sort of be shocked if / when they bring it back, since the team ownership does have say in this. I mean, it will probably be until the next time they're very, very good, or like they're spending a bunch. You're
not going to be booing next year.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you could make that Tom Ricketts commenting about Marquee, well, you won't be booing next year. You could take that and meme it to just like everything that's a horribly bad prediction, just like as the Titanic is leaving the deck, like you're not going to be booing the boat in a week. I'll tell you that much,
That reminds me of that Twitter account that's like images that precede whatever it is, that it's like MLB
other events or something.
Horrible events. Yeah. I mean, in this case, it's like you won't be booing next year because we're not doing it.
Yeah. I mean,
so you literally can't be booing next year.
If you're Tom Ricketts, that's how you don't get booed. Even like, was it with Chris Bryant, where when Bryant came back, Ricketts went to like home plate with him and they were like holding a plaque or something together.
Just wildly tone deaf.
Yeah, and so like, well, you can't boo because who knows who you're booing? I'm using Chris Bryant as my emotional bodyguard here when no one needs to fucking see your face dealing with Chris Bryant here, unless
and they
you're
can't even do like
sign...
they can't even do like the Carlos Boozer thing where it's like, well, is it like a boo or like a positive? It's not. No one's saying like Tom Rukes.
Yeah,
like, that's not a.
No, it's a real Simpsons boo earns situation. Although in good Chicago sports news, I mean, not good now because everyone has COVID, but the Bulls, it is a tradition unlike any other that the Bulls have a center from another country who it sounds like you're booing during starting lineup. Back in the day, obviously, the man in the middle was Luke Longley, and now Vucevic that's a thing that only big foreign white dudes on the on the Bulls get.
Vucevic is a fun Twitter follow, as it turns out. He was recently tweeting asking the Pistons if they wanted to play 3-on-3. Seems like fun. one of the only Bulls who is eligible to play. And you know what? I think it's our fault because you bought NBA League Pass during halftime against the Blazers, a game that the Bulls blew a 20-point lead in. And then I bought League Pass last week, and now there are no Bulls.
Well, the good news is I don't think they'll let us buy a second league pass on top of either of the ones we have. So we can't cause any more disasters for the Bulls, at least, which is nice. But yeah, Cubs wise, no Cubs convention. So I mean, it's like that's a thing where we could probably get together with some of the other Cubs heads, the social, social media wise and other podcasts and publication wise, and like have our own little thing. I mean, I know they do social media night in September, but it's almost like we should try to replace the thing.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah. But here's a little bit of a good Cubs adjacent news. So I personally, as a museum, I enjoy the Hall of Fame, but as an institution, I despise the Baseball Hall of Fame. The Ron Santo situation was the last nail in the coffin for me when Santo told them, if you're not going to induct me, do not fucking induct me after I die. Do not do it. And that's exactly what they did. They waited till he passed, and then they got to congratulate themselves for making what was an obvious and right call from the get-go. Ron Santo is a Hall of Famer, always should have been. So anyway, I hate the Hall of Fame, but a good thing happened in that Buck O'Neil was inducted finally into the Hall of Fame. And if you guys don't know, he has a significant Cubs connection. Buck does. He was in the organization for a while. He was a scout with the Cubs that was credited with signing Lou Brock. So that's not second Titanic reference in the day, but when the Titanic was built in Belfast, and when I was in Belfast, we were on a little tour, and the tour guide was like, as we say, it was fine when it left the dock. Well, Lou Brock was fine when he brought him in, and other people fucked that up for the Cubs. So he did that, but more notably, Buck O'Neil was the first black coach in Major League Baseball, and it was for the 1962 Chicago Cubs. So that is good Cubs news that Buck O'Neil is in. So
someone had shared a great clip of him on Letterman. I don't know if you saw that floating around, talking about what it was like to play with Jackie Robinson, and it like gave me chills.
Yeah. No, really, it was a very cool clip. I think we retweeted it from the At Away Games Pod account, but I was the music assistant at Letterman when Buck O'Neil came through. So I was backstage on that, and when he was coming through, and people were very excited, and he was as lovely as as he was to everyone his whole life. Like, that guy might have the highest approval rating over anyone who's ever been involved in baseball. So that's very cool. Once again, they didn't get him in as quickly as they should have. But it's nice that he is represented there now for sure. So that's good.
That begs the question of the 2016 Cubs.
Yeah.
Who would you be most inclined to make sure you go see get inducted into the Hall of Fame if someone gets inducted?
If someone gets inducted, yeah, because it seems like John Lester is going to have a decent argument, right? So out of that crew. And out of all the position players, all the guys who we just lost at the trade deadline and are not signing back in free agency, there was news, according to Sahadev, the Cubs were never really in on Javi to come back, which makes me mad. But out of, Javi, Bryant, Rizzo, Schwarber, these guys, like none of those guys I think you would say right now are on like a surefire Hall of Fame track. Like, Rizzo would have to have a real sort of resurgence and sustain that for a long time. Javi, weirdly, I'll give you a comp. Javi kind of offensively is pretty close to Andre Dawson as far as Hall of Fame comps, and is also like a super plus defensive player like Andre Dawson was. I don't think Javi's destined for the Hall of Fame necessarily, but just if you look at their numbers, you'll be surprised how close they are. I think Chris Bryant, you could see popping back maybe, but out of all those guys, it feels like John Lester might be the only one to actually get into the Hall of Fame. So I guess Lester, but in terms of who I would make sure
So you're not going to Chapman's or?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good call. Aroldis, you could see that.
I would go to Boo. I would drive to Cooperstown to
sure.
Boo.
Yeah. Out of all those guys, if magic happened and they made it, I mean Rizzo would be the one I think I would try to make.
Have you been to one before?
Yeah, actually, me and your boy, the aforementioned Ken Schultz, went to Andre Dawson's.
Oh, cool.
When Dawson got in, it was, I believe, Dawson, Whitey Herzog, I think, and someone else. But there was a very big, because it's relative. I mean, as far as driving goes, it's relatively close to Montreal, and Dawson went in officially with the Expos cap. So there was like a very strong Cubs showing and a very strong Expos showing. Fan wise, and that was great. But that's the only induction I've ever seen, and Andre Dawson was my first favorite player. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lester's would be and will be interesting if he gets in, because it'll be a ton of Red Sox fans, a ton of Cubs fans, and then like one guy in an A's hat.
Yeah, who really appreciated the run to the wild card loss. Yeah, but I would totally go for Lester's, also because I feel like if Lester gets in, I also think that will function as sort of a reunion of sorts, almost like in A League of Their Own, when at the end they like open the museum for women's baseball, and like everyone comes back. I could see Lester getting in as a reason for like a lot of those 2016 guys to get back together and get in there. Because if Lester gets in, it probably won't be first ballot. It'll probably be down the line a bit, but yeah, I would gas up the Chevy Cruze and get up there for sure. How about you?
Yeah, I think emotionally Rizzo would be the number one for me. But yeah, certainly, like if Bryant got into the Hall of Fame, I could see myself going. And also to your point, like we don't live that far. Like if in this scenario I still live in New York City, like I would go for any of them.
Any of them, yeah. That's the thing. If any one of them got in, if any 2016er got in, it's a no doubter. Like you go because it'll be about the player, but it'd also be about that team and that story too. And speaking of story, I will say this is that along with the news that the Cubs were never in on Javi in a serious way, according to Sahadev, it seems like the thing that we're getting from the Cubs going forward is that they're just not going to commit any years to anybody. So I'm torn on that because I understand it, obviously, right? Like the Marcus Stroman deal is sort of like a win-win. Like it can't possibly be a loss for the Cubs,
Right.
Like 3 years at that money, the money just doesn't matter. You're not spending up to the luxury tax threshold anyway. So that
I've heard people compare it to like a better Edwin Jackson deal.
Oh yeah,
which I hope that's not the case, but it is that sort of vibe.
Sure. And Edwin was what, a 4? I want to say maybe.
I think 3 or 4. Yeah.
Is it 3 or 4? Yeah. So I think I think that's great. We love the Stroman signing. Don't we, folks? So it's we love it. It's a beautiful contract, but I want to be hesitant because I don't want the Cubs. A team like the Cubs should not only be spending money and offering contracts to guys when it's a 102% clear win of a contract. Part of the benefit of being a big market team, and Patrick Mooney pointed this out on the On to Waveland podcast, but when you talk about the Cubs in terms of like aligning them with how the Mariners or the Tigers are spending, we should be talking about them operating more like the Mets. Like, even if that's not signing everybody in a Steve Cohen rage-fueled, check signing spree, they should be willing to throw an extra year here or there, or to throw a few extra million on and use that advantage. So so not being in on Javi was personally disappointing to me. I think he made so much sense in terms of not needing that much money, filling that elite defensive shortstop. But this might lead us more to Trevor Story, who might end up being the last shortstop who might be willing to take a shorter deal.
Yeah, I mean, do you see any scenario in which Correa considers a shorter deal?
No, and that's not obviously not inside information. I haven't seen Correa at any stand-up club I've been to lately, but this is it seems like he's going to at least beat Seager's deal. Like he's looking at
Right.
Seager and Lindor, right? Just especially as we're in a time of like labor unrest, the top free agent on the market sort of is going to be, he wants all the money in the world anyway, right? But also the union is going to want him to beat the previous deal.
Right. Yeah, because Seager got 325 for 10.
Mm-hmm.
So even a deal that long, he's averaging 32.5 per year,
Mm-hmm.
which in my mind means if you want Story on a short-term deal, you better be willing to spend in the 40s at least.
I
Like
think. Well,
I
I
think
think
the
or
only deal that
Correa,
gets
you're
Story
saying.
is like a yeah, or Correa, but like I think in order for these guys to even consider that, it would need to be like 4 years, 200 million or
I
something
wonder.
like
See, I think
absurd.
I think Story. It's weird because I think there's a greater shot at the Cubs going after Correa now than I certainly did before, because it just would make a lot of sense in terms of he is a plus plus defensive shortstop. He's super young as far as free agents go. The Cubs need a plus defensive shortstop with what their infield looks like and what their pitching staff looks like. Um, but if they don't do that, so many of the bidders are gone that Story might not have as many options as we had before. So I wouldn't be. I mean, I kind of wouldn't be shocked to see Story do like a 4 years 100 or something like that, or 4 years between 100 and 110, something like that. Because Story is coming off like a weaker year and his arm had trouble. But if you look a couple years back, the guy was putting up 6 WAR seasons, like 5, 6 WAR seasons. So I mean, in terms of if the Cubs are that hesitant to offer years, but they are not giving a shit about the AAV, the years money per year, I could see Story making sense to cover this next window before any of the Cubs' best prospects are up.
I mean, between those four shortstops we just talked about, so Javi, Story, Correa, and Seager,
Mm-hmm.
forgetting money, forgetting contracts, who would you most have wanted? Like, is the consensus that Correa is the best player of those four?
I,
I
be-
feel like it kind of is, right?
I believe so because it's Correa and Seager in terms of consistent offense upside. Correa is much more likely to stick at shortstop. He was the best defensive player by the metrics last year. He had 21 defensive runs saved, and I think a catcher had 20 was in second. So I think Correa is considered the number one. I really liked how Seager's bat fit in, but both in terms of lefty, the contact rate, everything. But I think both those guys come with like significant injury history too. So I
Yeah.
mean, which is all part of why out of all this, if it was me constructing the team, I would have signed Javi for what he got and just plugged him into shortstop. Wouldn't have worried about defense at short going forward, and then I would have spent that money elsewhere. But at this point, I mean, I think it makes 10 years 330 to Correa makes plenty of sense for a team like the Cubs. I mean, in
Mhm.
five, you expect to get the value in the first half of the contract. Well, 5 years from now, he's still 32. So, that's still like, you have a lot of decent prime years from this guy, you would think. Um, but yeah, and then I can absolutely see, if you can get Trevor Story 3, 4 years, he's not as good defensively as Correa is, but that's a legit shortstop at least, and I would respect that as an approach at least. What I
Right.
don't want to do is get into this weird stuff where it's like we're trading for an elite defensive shortstop whose offense is an absolute black hole, which is what I fear the fallback
Mhm.
would be here, trading for a Nick Ahmed or an Andrelton Simmons type who like yeah, they're very good defensively, but like the amount of negative their offense brings is like incredible. And we don't need any more of that on this team.
Well, do you think we're in a scenario where either the Cubs do sign one of the big shortstops remaining and then nothing else, or or is it just like let's spread that money around sort of thing?
I
Like,
mean,
is there any
yeah.
scenario in which the Cubs get one of these big shortstops and then also improve in other ways? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, you could see it probably more coming from trade or like 1 year deals because I mean the Cubs could give Correa 10 and 330 as soon as you come out of the lockout, and they still would not be scratching the luxury tax this year or next year. So you could absolutely do
Yeah.
that. I mean, you could sign Correa and Schwarber, and you're still under the tax. You know what I mean? So do I think that's going to happen? Not necessarily, no. But yeah, the exciting thing is, I guess, that now that we saw the Stroman deal, Jan Gomes signed hopefully as a backup catcher. The Cubs they have to be kind of in on Correa and Story. I'm hoping you would think you don't sign Stroman in a deal he can opt out after 2 if you're not thinking about getting serious this year in some way. And the Cubs are not serious yet. They're like they need more to be a serious team going into next year, and hopefully that's the intention here.
Yeah, and I think what would be most frustrating for us as fans is to find out that the Cubs just like weren't in on either of those guys. Like, it's one thing if the Yankees just throw $430 million at Correa and he
Right.
takes it, and you're like, well, that would not have been a smart thing to do. But
Sure.
if we find out after the fact, like you were saying about Javi, that the Cubs were just never really in on either Story or Correa, to me, that's malpractice.
I think so too, and that's why like the Javi signing elsewhere was the emotionally the saddest I've been as a Cubs fan. I think in the past year because I just thought he made so much sense, and of course I wanted him I want him because I love him, but I also believe he's just worth that money. An elite defensive shortstop is necessary, and it's like, man, that's the difference between Javi and Correa. You're talking something like $200 million. So it's like you can do a lot with $200 million. So from a team building standpoint, I just thought that was the most sensible play. But it seems like Hoyer was not in on that. And Hoyer was also hinting that they might be done in the starting pitching market, which would be a little weird to me because it is still, you haven't, Hendricks, if Hendricks is pitching like Hendricks anytime outside of last year, Hendricks is a number 1. Stroman can pitch at a number 1 kind of level. But the rest of it is a lot of hoping for 5s, hoping for 4s and 5s. So I don't know. Yeah, it will be nice to see when it opens up again that the Cubs should be in on somebody interesting,
Yeah, if you give me Story or Correa and another starting pitcher of some sort, I am a very, very happy man.
I think, yeah. I mean, if the Cubs sign Story or Correa and Stroman, I think it's hard to have legit complaints about this offseason, right? Because Correa is the top free agent overall, and Stroman, you could argue, was the top free agent pitcher. And if your team comes out of an offseason with those things, well, congrats, they're acting like a big market team with all the money to spend, which is what they are.
Right.
So I would not if that happens, which I'm not expecting, but like if it does, yeah, okay, I'm interested now. And then I think you probably still need, even if you fill shortstop with one of those guys, I think you still probably need another bat and another starter, but that could come by way of trade or something too,
Yeah, the Cubs, to put it plainly, should be acting like the Yankees and Red Sox, which is to say that there is not really any tolerance for rebuilding because
No.
even if all else fails, there's the money to go out and buy at least a competitive team.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of talking about like trades that they could make coming up, which obviously those are harder to predict or harder to even dream on than free agents because it's a more complicated process. But Fangraphs dropped their list of top 49 Cubs prospects if you want to go dive into that. And what the main notable thing I take from this, and it's a lot of the top prospect lists have been dropped by a bunch of different places now, is that number 1 is Brennan Davis. And we're going to see him at some point next year. Great. Very excited about that. And then between 2 and 13, I would say, is like you could shake it up in a box and you could sort of order it in any way that you prefer. So out of that, 2 through 13, the Cubs not all those prospects are making it to Chicago, A, because of performance, but B, because some of these guys are going to be used in a significant trade at some point. So
right.
That's something to consider going forward too.
What are the some of the names that excite you most in that 2 to 13 range?
I'll give you a quick rundown. So Brennan is number one. Fangraphs has been the high man out of the publications on Kevin Alcantara, who the Cubs got out in the trade to the Yankees with Rizzo. So Alcantara is a center fielder, 6'6", 180 is what we're told, with huge, so a big old center fielder with big raw power, decent speed right now.
180 seems skinny for 6'6".
He's very crazy V-shaped, like a very tight waist, big shouldered dude. Hashtag body talk. But he is he's a guy. But I'll tell you, the ETA Fangraphs has on him is 2024, and you look at the ETAs just running down 2024, 2025, 2026, 25, 25. You know, down the list. That's when we're talking about the way for most of these guys. Personally, the guys I'm most excited about are your boy DJ Hers, friend of the show, who had historic strikeout rates in the minors last year, literally like all-time great strikeout rates. Now he might be up in a couple of years. There's some reliever risk on him, but Fangraphs has him at 11 in the Cubs system. I believe the away games.
DJ Hers, that is?
Yeah, DJ Hers. I believe the away games rankings would have him at about 4th out of this. And just to pick a couple other names, Christian Hernandez is the shortstop, just turned 18, and he was one of the top signings in the international class when the Cubs got him. And he, I think, is a very high ceiling prospect. He'd be who I have at 2. And then just 2 other names, Owen Casey and James Triantos, who are both teenagers. Casey came over in the Yu Darvish deal, but big left-hander who can like elite exit velocities. There's some real power there. And James Triantos went through high school basically without ever swinging and missing, almost literally, and really tore it up in Arizona last year. So,
Nice.
yeah. So those
Time for us to start sliding into some DMs. We already talked to Brendan Davis and DJ Hers. Why not?
Yeah, and Ethan Roberts we talked to too, who's now on the 40 man. So congratulations to Ethan Roberts. He's now on the doorstep of getting to the majors. And Caleb Killian, I will say, is a guy, he threw 6 perfect innings in the Arizona Fall League Championship game, and he could be up at some point next year with the Cubs. So that's one that's closer to arrival.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got anything else?
Nope, that's all I got.
Have you done your Christmas shopping for this year?
I've done some of it. I've done some of it, but do you have a suggestion, something I could get for like a man in my life?
I do, yes. For for both the his and the hers in your life.
His and the DJ
As a
Hers.
DJ Hers joke.
Yes.
Yeah. That'd be a fun wedding hashtag if DJ gets married, like hashtag hers and hers.
Yeah.
Spelled
Yes.
both ways. That could be fun.
Oh, totally.
Here's the thing. You know, if you want to get a gift for someone that is also kind of a nudge, you're also telling them something with your gift. I think there's nothing better than getting them some grooming stuff, you know, and you can get them the Lawnmower 4.0. You can get it from Manscaped. You can use promo code AWAYGAMES. You'll get 20% off. And, you know, listen, we're all on the internet. We all see that you can get 20% off from Manscaped pretty much at any time, but we want you to use our code.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Right?
And I'll tell you why.
Us.
Yes, because we get
why?
money. Because we get money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
and we like that. And we think you like it too. And it keeps us going doing this. And it's a good product. It's solid. And you know, you want a razor for the rest of your body and a different razor for your face. So, you know, this is helpful that way.
Unless you want your downstairs to be in a lockout too. Take care of yourself.
Take care. DH. Give your dick the DH. Change the rules. Come out of the lockout. Get ready.
Yeah. Lock out with your cock out. I'm sorry. That's inappropriate.
I think that's fine. I think they from what we could tell, dealing with the folks at Manscaped, they do not give a shit what you're talking about when you're talking about their product. So that's cool. Promo code AWAYGAMES. Do it.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it. We've been on kind of an every 2 week sort of schedule, which would mean that our next episode would theoretically be the last week of December. Unclear if we'll have something for you then, but I think the objective here is we're going to be doing stuff throughout the off season. Certainly, once the lockout is over, we'll be a lot more active, and we're also going to slide into some players' DMs, try to get some more folks back on the pod. See if Steele will come back on, talk to us about his big league experience, maybe do some crossover stuff with some of the other podcasts that cover the Cubs and baseball in general. And that's kind of the plan.
That sounds great. So when we come back, we'll come back for a reason. It'll be before too long, but we hope you guys have a happy holidays in the meantime. And take it easy. Take care of yourselves. Also, I'll do a quick plug. If you happen to live in the central southern Illinois region, I am going to be doing shows in Illinois this weekend. Jesus. So I'm
going to tell my mom to show up and bring a cake. How about that?
Do it. Tell your mom to get me a gosh darn cake. I will be in Mason City, Illinois at Mason City Limits, December 17th and 18th. It's a very, very nice little club there. And I'll be in Delavan, Wisconsin on December 19th. So I'll be doing.
Is Mason City the town that made dancing illegal?
No, but it seems like it could have. It's the smallest town. The people there are great. It's like the most small town comedy club I've ever seen in my life.
That's awesome.
They're lovely. But like it's many miles off the nearest highway, and the first sign you've seen coming into town says Monsanto, and it's like, well, that's not great. But you know,
what's the club called in Mason City?
Mason City Limits.
Nice.
Yes.
Kind of like Austin City Limits. Is that the reference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think so. So it's a one-man festival. It'll be me. So
well,
yeah. So we'll.
And on the extremely off chance that any of our Cubs fan listeners live in New Jersey, I'll be headlining the Stress Factory on Wednesday, December 22nd.
That sounds awesome. So thanks, guys. Happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. Hopefully we'll have some more Cubs-related gifts to bring you in the new year. But till then, thanks for listening.